Welcome back to my channel. A few years ago, well, more than a few years ago, um, when I first moved out on my own and I got my first apartment, I was living in Atlanta at the time. And it was a great thing for me, right? Getting away from home, having some freedom, somewhat. And it was great. And I've been in the church all my life, by the way. Let me start off by saying that. So everything that I know is church. That's who I am. That's in my DNA. So when I moved from home, I knew I was going to find me a great church home. I was going to get involved. I was going to do all of these things. I had all of these dreams of what I wanted to do. And it was all about what I wanted to do. And I didn't really think about that until now, but a lot of that, what I'm saying, is about what I wanted to do. I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that. Never included God in any of these plans, even though God was at the center of everything, because I wanted to be involved in church and doing things to help the church and to help his kingdom. But once I got my own place and life started lifing really fast, if you know what I mean. I had my first apartment. Now I got rent I gotta pay, I got bills I gotta pay. First time I ever had to pay those things. And church became something that wasn't that important, right? Because I had to work. Bills became important. Rent, light bill, water bill, phone bill. All of these things that I never knew before, because I was staying at home. I was living with my brother at the time. So when I got on my own, me thinking that, man, I'm gonna do all these wonderful things in the church, man, reality hit me fast, because work became more of a priority, because I needed a place to stay. I had to have things, in order for my apartment to go the way it needed to go. And church became few and far in between. First it was, well, if I miss this Sunday, I can go next Sunday. Or if I miss Sunday morning, I can go to Sunday evening. All of those excuses in going, oh, well, I just can't go to church at all because I got to get extra hours. I got to work. I got to do this. I got to do that. And that was a very trying time in my life. Because it's one thing if you don't know and you don't do right. It's different. Like, that you probably should be doing this, but you don't think none of it. But it's another thing when you know what to do, when you know what is right, and then you don't do it. Oh man, that hits different. And for me, that really hit different, because I knew what I needed to do, but to me, it wasn't lining up with what my reality was at the time. Because my reality was, man, I gotta pay these bills. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. And all of these dreams that I had, church was nowhere in those dreams at that time. And it's crazy for me to think about that now, because when I think about now where I am now, I couldn't imagine not having that as that foundation. But then my foundation wasn't built on that. My foundation was built on, man, I gotta have this money so I can do these things in my life. And then I wonder why things didn't go the way it needed to go. I remember one time my car got towed, right? Because I didn't have the insurance, or my insurance had lapsed and I didn't know. Just things like that happened throughout that time. And I go back and I think about that, man, those things happened because I did not have God as my foundation. I did not have God as the forefront of what was important. I put everything else above him. And then I wonder why things failed in my life. And some of you all may be going through that right now, wondering why things aren't going the way you want it to go in your life at this moment. Well, you have to look back and see, what is your foundation? What are you focused on? What is your main thing? Back then, my main thing was work. Back then, my main thing was making sure that I had enough money to do all these material things, and I lost sight on what was most important, that was God. Not knowing that if I place him first, then everything else will fall in line like it needed to. And that was a tough pill for me to swallow, because again, I grew up in church, man. Church was everything that I knew. But when I got out into the real world, I quickly found out how difficult it is to sustain a Christian lifestyle. Because the world hit, man, and it hit hard. But what really brought me back to where I needed to go was my wife. Now, she wasn't my wife at the time, she was my girlfriend, but it's important to have people in your life, or it's important that the significant person that's in your life shares the same values that you do. Now, my wife wasn't in a church like I was, but she understood how important that was to me. And I think that's key to any relationship. Whoever it is that you want to be involved with, they need to understand how important something is to you. And if they care about you and if they love you, they'll make that their priority too. But not even that, they'll make sure that if nothing else, you're doing what you need to do. And during that time, she was that voice that was telling me, you know what, you know you need to be here. You know you need to be at church. You know you need to be doing this. You know you need to be doing that. Even though she wasn't all the way in as I was, but she understood how important that was to me. I guess that's why the Bible says when a man finds a wife, he finds a good thing, right? When God places that right person in your life, man, you'll know it because they'll put themselves or they'll put you before them at times. They'll make sure that you have what you need because they know that if you're right, then you're going to make sure everything else is right. She was that one voice that I needed to hear. It wasn't my family. It wasn't my friends. Because you know your family's going to tell you, you know, hey, you need to be doing this, or you know you need to be doing this, or you know what you're not needing is right. And you don't always want to hear that all the time because a lot of times it comes from a judgmental place. Now, I'm not saying that I was getting those things, but for those of you who may be watching, you know, sometimes family, they love you, but sometimes they can be very harsh. And some of those critiques, you know, because they say they're doing this because they want you to do better. A lot of times they don't always come across that way. So the voice that I needed to hear at that time or that God needed for me to hear that I didn't even know it was my future wife. Because she was telling me everything that I needed to do in order to get back on track. Hey, you need to get back focused. So again, if you're in a relationship, make sure that that person that you're in a relationship with values everything that you value. Make sure they are or they have the same goals that you do. They understand what you need because they know if you get what you need, then ultimately that's going to translate over to them. So I'm very thankful for my wife now because she got me through a very tough time in my life, a rough spot. Like I said, it was my first time really being out in the real world, you know, having real responsibilities, and it hit hard and it hit fast. But she kept me grounded, you know. She kept me in tune with what I needed to do. I say that whole time, or that whole part of my life was an eye-opener. Because it was that moment that I truly realized in order for my life to be what I needed it to be, God had to be number one. And I think from that moment on, that's when I really tried to make God number one in my life in everything that I did. Because I understood what happened when he wasn't. When I made him number two, when I made him number three, when I made him number four, I saw how things progressed in my life. And it didn't progress the right way. So it took that rough time in my life for me to truly realize where I needed to be and who needed to be number one in my life. And some of you right now are going through some rough times in your life. You're going through some difficult moments in your life. And if I were to ask you a question, if I were to ask you, where do you have God in your line of priorities? He's probably not number one. Maybe he's not even number two. And if that's the case, I want you to think about that. Then I want you to think about why is that? And then what would happen if you make him number one? How would your life be if you made God your number one priority? If you place God above everything else, how different would your life be? I can go out on a limb and say your life would be a whole lot better. Because now you have things in line the way he wants you to. Now you're basing your decisions off of his will and not your own. You see, When I first moved out, I thought my decisions was based on his will, but ultimately they were based on mine. Because I wanted to get my own place. I wanted to do all of these things. It was all about me, myself, but I never included God in any of these plans. And then I watched everything else fall because he wasn't number one. It took me getting to a very low part of my life for me to finally realize that, man, if I want things to be different, God has to be number one. So that's my message for you guys today. The whole point of this navigating through life with God is to show you guys that if you want your life to be different, you have to include God in it. You have to include God in everything that you do if you want your life to be better than what it is. So if you're going through something right now, if you're dealing with a situation, if you're constantly wondering why you keep going down the same roads, doing the same things and getting the same results, maybe you need to think about who do you have as the captain of your boat? Who do you have leading you? And if this person isn't God, now it's time to reevaluate that. Because I said in my other videos, I can't guarantee you much, but the one thing I can guarantee is that God is the only thing that's reliable in our lives. If we rely on him, everything else we do will fall right into place. That I believe. Once I started truly relying on God, I saw a difference in my life. I saw a difference in my lifestyle. I saw a difference in everything that I did once I finally started relying on God. And I know that if you guys start relying on God, man, you're going to see some crazy things happen in your life. You're going to see some things happen that you never thought ever would have happened if you allow God to do some incredible things in your life. If you're finding interest in what I'm saying, please comment down below. Let me know. Let me know how you feel. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know if you haven't been putting God first. And if you want to continue to hear things like this, continue to see how I'm progressing in my life and how I've used past experiences to show just how wonderful and great God is, man, like, subscribe, and share this channel with somebody else. I want to grow this community to be able to show everyone through my life and just do things that I experience, that if you place God at the top, if you have him at your foundation, man, life will be a lot easier with him in it than with him without it. Now that's navigating through life with God. Stay blessed.